Good evening, everybody. It is Epi 149.
Oh, sorry.
Wow, comments here. Leslie Ann is in there first.
Oh, first time for everything.
Wow.
Unbelievable. Leslie Ann, 3,500
points. Nicole's in 2,500.
Nicole, epic.
Good evening, Linda.
Linda Edwards. Seriously.
Edwards.
Hello, Linda. How are you? Nice to
Obviously,
see you
must
on
be
here.
a friend of Cliff's because I don't recall seeing Linda.
She's
here
a friend of
before.
mine. I can say only very clearly. It's about time you showed up. I was just saying. I mean, I say that to everybody, Linda. So you can just, even if you haven't heard the podcast before, you got to know that I torture absolutely everybody who comes on here. If they come on late, I say it's about time you showed up. If they've never been here, I say it's about time you showed up. So, hi.
And Cheryl Seltzer's here as well.
Oh, Cheryl. Nice to see you, Cheryl.
Wow.
Look at this. We got
See what he said? See what he said? See that? Did you hear that? See what he said?
What's that?
So some of you will see, obviously, as we do our little banter, we have a special guest here tonight. So we're going to get into
Okay,
that,
ready? Jazz hands.
So we have. I was doing the underhand.
Oh, the over under jazz hands. Whatever.
Can I ask a question?
Shoot.
I don't think it's been asked before.
Yes,
It
you are on the
has.
right podcast.
No, I'm on the right podcast. I can tell that. How come I got points, but I never got something in the mail that said, "Here's how you redeem your points"?
Because we're not
Like, you
Publishers
give
Clearinghouse.
points away every week. And what do you do with them?
But they don't mean jack.
Well, then why do I rush to try to get on first?
Hey, everybody watching?
I'm like,
The points don't mean nothing.
I
Listen.
should buy myself something.
Okay, just for the record, those of you who are new, such as Linda Edwards, those of you who are new, fact of the matter is, we blatantly, I'm talking as blatantly as possible, just ripped off whose line it is anyway.
Yeah.
Because they gave out points that don't mean anything. So we thought, hey, listen, we like points. We like to give them away, but we like it that they don't mean anything.
We like lots of things that mean nothing.
Right. So therefore, there's your answer, Cheryl. So you get points.
I collect points to do something with them.
Well, you're on the
It's a
podcast.
little
Maybe
Oh,
some of the points.
Yeah.
That's how I got on.
Hey, maybe that's how
maybe that's how we
Hey,
can
hold on.
redeem the points.
Listen, you just witnessed the birth of an idea live on the Podlie
That's it. We
Podcast.
can redeem the points.
I think I only got points once, so I don't.
Where's
think I
Laura?
was the
Laura,
winner.
start counting the points.
Start counting the
So then you're
points.
gonna have to owe us. Then Chai's gonna have to
Okay,
owe.
I
us.
owe you.
No, but hey, you just witnessed the birth of an idea live on the Podlie Podcast. I
you go.
think that when a person gets to a certain number of points, like about I don't know how many, Laura
1
can
million.
keep count. Laura can keep count.
Yep.
Then they get to be a guest on the Podlie
I'm
Podcast
good
and talk
with
to about what talk to us or talk with us about whatever they wish.
And
I'm good
I
with
don't
it.
think she's even here to count. So, hello.
Well, that's
there,
all right.
Marvin.
We've already nominated her.
Marvin's here. William Kirkland is here.
That's what I do.
William
Well-
Kirkland, how are you, sir?
Yeah.
Welcome.
Good evening, all. Of course, we have our special guest here this
Yeah.
evening, and we'll get into that
Yeah, we should kind of
shortly
allow
why
Bill
she's
to
here.
introduce. Sorry.
to why she's here.
He
So-
did it too.
So
Told you.
we're all doing it. Yeah. So Chai Salter Roberts is here. So we're going to get into why she's here shortly, and you probably saw that
I don't know why.
in our topic. But as we start, this is again
You're
Epi,
about to get into an argument.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Epi 149.
149.
149. So having said that, as we always start, how was the week, Cliff?
Oh, it was good, man. It was really good. Not too busy, not too slack. I got a motorcycle ride out of it. Actually, a couple of motorcycle rides, really quick ones, short ones. Met Linda Edwards for some brekkie on what day was that? Saturday. Saturday must have Saturday morning.
Nice.
And then took a drive out to Saskatchewan to pick my lovely wife up, who was there. So it's been a fun weekend so far, and
Busy.
been looking forward to this. I know Bill was going to do a little bit of rearranging on the set here, so it's nice to be with you guys and nice to be live and nice to have Chai with us. Not a bad week, I'd say.
Not bad at all. I'm just sorry everybody's having their own conversation
I know,
right
right?
now, so they're not even. But apparently Laura is singing, so she won't be here to count points. But I've just been
Unbelievable.
watching the board. How about you there, Mr. Paul? How was the week? I understand you've got a bit of a change happening.
Hey, this is the May.
It's May 1st.
This is the May.
May the 1st be with you.
That's
'cause
right.
May the
No,
4th
no,
be with
no.
you.
May the 4th be with you.
That's coming.
Is coming up. And it will be return of the 5th.
Yeah.
So this is my month, pretty much. Oh, hey, by the way, I'm hosting Star Wars trivia on May the 4th.
Yeah, too bad
I'm
it
very
wasn't Star
excited
Trek trivia.
I'm very
Yeah.
excited about. I'm sorry, I've never heard of
What?
I'm sorry, I've never heard of that. Thank
Yeah.
you very much. I am well.
It's kind
Yes,
of like that band he talks about, Depeche Mode. Has anybody heard of
Depeche,
Depeche Mode?
yeah, I know.
That's not funny.
Never heard that.
November 21st. I'm there.
Never heard.
You're
Yeah. So I'm at the DM concert,
Oh,
November 21st.
oh, they're actually coming. Did you know that?
Dude, who?
Depeche Mode. They're coming.
I'm sorry. Have I not said that enough? By the way,
Are they
good.
coming to a coffee house or Rogers?
Yeah, it's good.
Roger.
That's a good question.
No.
That's a good question.
Coming to a coffee house.
Come on now.
Okay, Bill.
Else, I get them all to myself. I'd be okay with that.
What about you, man? How's your week?
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
busy at
Yeah,
work or?
steady week. Another we've had the past April and I guess March and April were record-breaking months for our company for sales.
Oh, wow,
So
nice.
another big month. So it was,
What do you attribute that to, by the way? Coming out of COVID, fully? Not that we haven't-
maybe I don't know. It was just flying.
Well, technology is on an exponential ramp up right now.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Dan, that's going to be part of our discussion here today as well,
Yep.
folks. So,
Yeah.
so Chai, what about
We
you?
got to ask you. You're here. So
How was your
you're at the
week?
parties. How was
Have a
your
little
week?
water.
Yeah.
It was that good, wasn't
Is that water?
Is that good?
Is that good?
That is water.
She says it's
Clear,
water.
it's water.
Well, yeah, but vodka's clear too.
Am I talking about my life or just the weekend?
Yeah, just
You're
talk
talking
about your
about
week.
vodka.
What did you do? Yeah.
I had to go and speak in front of 770
Oh,
people.
did you?
I did.
How was it?
Nice.
It's good.
What did you have to speak about?
Just had to make them cry. That's what they pay me for. It was a memorial service.
I see. Okay. All right. Got
Actually,
it.
it was
Got
a hike for our hospice to raise money,
Oh, okay, cool.
and they asked me to do a little memorial at the beginning. So
Yeah. So what
and I
did
made people cry. So that means
So, do you have final numbers
770 people as well, I can't say.
for
I'm not-
fundraising? For fundraising,
Yeah, I
I don't
can't
think
say.
she's
Can't
allowed to
say.
say.
No.
okay,
Yeah.
that's cool.
But
That's cool.
more than we
Anticipated.
anticipated in the
Cool,
moment.
love it.
in the moment. So-
Love it.
Cool.
Love it.
So just before I ask Chai the next question, Leslie says to you, Polly, that's Revenge of the Fifth, Polly.
What did I say?
So get it
You
straight.
just said the
The
fifth. I don't
revenge
think you
of
gave
the
the full
fifth. Yeah.
revenge of the fifth. portion.
Pauline.
Yeah. So
She calls
Paul.
you Pauline.
Yeah, she meant Polly. of
Pauline.
course.
It's all good.
So-
Pauline, Paulina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Pauline.
Well,
so
I like
Chai,
Pauline.
I answered a "Hey, you with the face." Doesn't
Chai, since you mentioned the hospice, perhaps you'd like to give us a catalog cut, an elevator pitch, or whatever you want to call it, and let us know what you do there, because that's relevant
Oh,
to this
right.
It's
particular
relevant to the
discussion.
conversation. That's a good idea.
Okay, I didn't finish
You're on
my
the ball
weekend
tonight.
though. So I'll tell you that. but then
Finish
come
the
back to
week.
the
The
weekend.
weekend's finished. It's Monday.
Hey, I tell you what I did the
Hey,
rest
I
of
saw the
weekend.
greenhouse. You working on the greenhouse?
No.
No.
Oh, I thought it
Greenhouse
looked.
is falling apart. It's
Oh.
it's free.
Needs some
'cause it's-
I thought it was being built up, not falling, not the other way
We're actually
around.
We've
Take
actually
it
taken it apart.
apart.
I got
and
it.
rebuild it because it's
Roger that.
150 kilometer an hour winds.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. Anyway, where was I going?
Weekend.
Oh, what do I do?
What'd you do?
Oh wait, am I doing the weekend?
Yeah. So you just talked about.
This is the weekend
you talked about
report.
The hospice.
Chai.
Clifford is confusing. Okay, I'll go
Spiffy
back to the
Cliffy,
weekend.
as we call it.
Spiffy
Okay,
Cliffy.
so we did that.
We do.
That was the new directive in the fine print. Sorry, Chai, could you
Sorry.
please
Not a
continue?
problem.
Go ahead.
So, did the memorial service, did one counseling session, made that person cry as well. That's what they pay me for. What else did we do? And then we hung out the rest of the
Did
day.
some
We
work
did a little
around the
shopping.
acreage. Did some shopping.
Meant to get a car wash and forgot. But I'm
You
glad
talked
I
about
didn't.
breaking down the greenhouse. You're making me cry.
We didn't. No, it's the wind
You have
is
that effect
breaking
on
down.
people, Chai.
So-
Hang on, just quickly before we'll let Chai, because you got to tell us what you do at the hospice. But Nicole has a comment there, Cliff.
Wait. You mean
Saturday?
1, 2, 3.
Saturday?
There we go.
Let's
Hey,
see.
look.
I just talk amongst
Okay,
ourselves.
the good
so
thing-
let's start
The
out.
good thing is when we're live, we can actually coordinate that
Yeah.
because normally Bill and I are out of sync because when we're on Zoom, there's a delay.
Yeah.
So we're not that far out of time.
Yeah,
I mean,
we're
it's
pretty
only the I know.
I think we're pretty good. Anyways,
Okay, then we watched a very stressful hockey game.
yes,
Very
we did.
stressful
It's
hockey.
okay
Saturday
because tomorrow morning, Sunday, we're going to sleep in. How
Nice.
why is it when you know you can sleep in, you don't sleep in?
Yeah,
I
we
know,
got up
right?
early.
That's the truth, eh?
It's truth.
That's the truth.
So just to go back 1 second when you said you get paid to make people cry. I would love it if people paid me because I could poke people in the eye very quickly. Like Faulty Towers, and he goes, Manuel.
Faulty Towers. Wow, or something.
And they'd cry, and if they would pay me for that, that would be like a ridiculously great gig. But I get what you mean.
It's actually a hard gig.
A hard gig.
But,
No, that part's hard, but poking people in the eye would be
Well,
really easy.
I don't poke them in the eye.
Must have glasses.
Oh, so you make them cry differently then? By a different
I
method.
poke at their
But we
feelings
all
so
have
they will
glasses
cry.
on here. So how do you poke?
I know.
somebody in the eye with glasses on? Anyway,
Okay, so
okay, explain to us what you do at the hospice. And hi, Andrea, by the way.
Hello,
Hi, Andrea.
So what do? I'm the director of the grief support programs. And so I'm an educator and a counselor, and I help people figure out the grief process when they're waiting for someone to die or someone they love has already died.
Nice. So palliative care as well.
Yeah.
Nice.
Exactly.
Nice. Okay.
Question.
Sorry, Polly. Both palliative to the person involved who is actually facing death, and also to the families.
So, yes.
Okay.
So working with the person who's dying, their family, community, colleagues,
Everybody
anyone
involved.
attached.
Everybody
But
involved.
it's also not just palliative care. So prior to our new building being built, if you want to come for a tour, I'll take you. We didn't have people living in residence in the house, as we call it. They would die at home. They would die in the hospital, other hospices. Once we built this building, we could have up to 12 people live with us. So now we're dealing with those individuals and then their families and everything.
Oh, nice.
But prior to that building, we focused on community. So the other part of my grief program is deaths related to accident, suicide, murder,
Right.
any way that you die.
Mhm.
Kids, little ones, all the way to seniors.
That's
So it's
tough.
quite varied.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said in your prior comment, you help people figure out the grieving process.
Yes.
Okay, so help me with this. Isn't the grieving process for everybody different?
Yes.
Okay, so explain that. How do you help people figure out the grieving process when the grieving process for you and it is different than me, it's different than you, and it's different than you?
Exactly. And everybody in a family grieving the same person will have it completely
different.
Yeah. So that's what usually brings people to us is they're like, why are we all grieving differently? They don't know what is normal, typical grief. So it's like I said earlier, a lot of education, but also the feelings can be so big or so tapped down that they can't get them to come forward. So that's part of what we do as well.
So are you an educator or are you a counselor?
Both.
Both.
Because it's education and it's therapy.
Yeah, it's both.
Okay.
Every counseling, well, other than some types of therapy, like reflective therapy and all that type of stuff, is part education and part counseling.
Love what
And
Nicole
so-
said.
And so I'll toss in there really quick, just so people know. So Chai has become known as probably one of the #1 grief experts in the city
Nice.
and around. So she gets clients from all over, including a lot of very well-known people in the city, etc., have come to
Nice.
to Chai. So when people need grief, that it usually comes to her name. So many
Mhm.
organizations refer to Chai for grief experience. So she's become the name in the city over the past 19, 20 years.
Nice.
20, well, 19
Okay.
at hospice, but
20 or more.
26.
Yeah.
Okay,
So-
so you followed your grieving education / counseling journey. How did you do it? Post-secondary in psychology, post-secondary in how did you get there? How did you get here, I guess?
So first it was personal experience. We had our own experiences, Bill and I and our family, created our family center, the Briar Patch, which you have been to. And we just moved from there. My journey was different. I didn't go into psychology. I took a lot of different post-secondary education that added up to what I needed. And I continue to do that, continue to learn as I go.
And so a couple of comments
So
quickly.
can I add one thing? I was going to say, sorry, when you talk about grief and then therapy, a lot of times I always say everyone who's grieving does not need therapy, but most people need education
Correct.
around grief.
Oh, I like
Therapy
that.
piece is often for more traumatic experiences. People phone us and say, I need therapy. And most of the time they just need the education and the compassion and the support, but not necessarily the therapy.
So a couple of the quick comments. So Leslie Ann says, firsthand experience with palliative counseling makes the process so much more meaningful. So I'm a little curious, Leslie Ann, what do you mean by firsthand experience?
She's had firsthand experience with palliative care, right?
Right, on that side, okay.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Just wanted
So
to-
Yeah, we don't want to get too
Yeah.
specific.
yeah, we don't want to get
but-
too
yeah, we don't
specific,
wanna get too
but
specific,
she's
I love Nicole's comment. Grief is
Yeah.
is not linear.
Yeah.
It's a total roller coaster,
100%.
and it's
Yeah.
all okay. And I like her last comment. I like all of her whole comment. I like her last comment the best.
Yeah.
her last statement.
Linda, I agree. It's been tough going through grief. Nicole says Chai and you, and I'm assuming you're talking about Patty Walker, Nicole. So we know Patty Walker as well. And Patty does a program where she works with parents who have lost a child.
Babies.
Babies. Sorry, babies. She does babies. Yes. Chai works with everybody from people who've lost babies to working with kids who, as you said, who have lost a parent, grandparent, teachers, anybody who's going through grief. And as you said, anything. You've worked on some pretty high profile cases in the city, which I won't get into, but have involved, more than other things as well. So anyway,
yeah, because you're bound, you're also bound by client confidentiality. Are you? Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's what I thought.
So sometimes there'll be a public death, and these guys will ask me at home, "Are you working with that family or that individual?" And I can't tell.
You
them.
can't say that. You can't say. You can't say.
All confidential.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
So one of the big reasons that we decided to have Chai on, so for those of you that were all tuned in last week, we got into a pretty good discussion on AI, artificial intelligence, on how it's really taking hold of our world. And we had this big discussion. We had some disagreements and back and forth about it, etc. And we got into talking about counseling, and Cliff, of course, was talking about how we can have AI do counseling. So whether it's a robotic counselor that's actually sitting in the room with you and doing the counseling.
It was not prime time, but very close.
And
it's not at this particular moment, but it's not 50 years away. It's not 60 years away.
It's very close.
It's an extreme short time away from
So we got into that conversation about having that.
And just to clarify, because what happened was Chai sort of mentioned because we were talking about AI replacing jobs or not replacing jobs, but replacing people who do the jobs in so many different arenas. And Chai had mentioned that it'd be difficult, not difficult. He said, well, they won't be replacing my job anytime soon. And then Bill had mentioned that, maybe in 50, 60 years. And I think that's where I sort of diverged with the opinions of these folks, and so that's what the sort of the catalyst of the impetus for this discussion is. So this is kind of great. I love this, right? Because we have an expert here, and I love the idea of being able to discuss this in this environment. So that's the precursor to it. So
yeah. And again, so as you were alluding to, you were stating that you felt that through AI,
right,
that AI can read your eyes, they can read your expressions, etc. So why would they not be able to handle you coming in for grief counseling, for an example, without having to have a physical grief counselor there? Yeah, because they'll be able to read all of your expressions. They'll know what you're feeling, that kind of thing. And that's my understanding how you were coming across. Where I was coming from the other side, and then of course I know Chai was throwing in comments as well.
Yeah.
So is that kind of where you were?
That sounds reasonable. But like I say, it's not prime time, as I mentioned last week as well. It's not always going to happen tomorrow.
But you're right; it could happen in the next 2 years, 5. It could happen.
Yeah, and I think partly, I'm pretty passionate about this stuff for different reasons, but none the least of which is that AI is taking over a gargantuan amount of our world. And it concerns me in many areas. And when people perhaps say that, hey, this is not going to affect me, I instantly take some opposing view to that, because I have a distinct feeling. It might be a gut feeling. It might be I've read a vast amount. As you people know, you folks know, I love to read, and I read absolutely everything. There's nothing that doesn't interest me. So I do a significant amount of reading about everything. And then what happens is when you put it up, just like Cheryl, just like Chai, you mentioned that, you don't necessarily have a specific direction of education, but you've taken a bunch of courses, you've taken a bunch of information in. And I have a distinct idea that we humans, when we take in vast amounts of information, some of us study that way. And I'm like that. So it's my understanding, or certainly my feeling, that when we humans take in a vast amount of information, we don't necessarily know it, but slowly the truth simmers to the top. And then we get an understanding of a certain path in life, or a certain something that is coming that maybe other people don't see. And I'm not saying other people don't see this. Other people see this clearly. But I'm just saying that in the vast amount of sort of reading that I do and stuff like that, there's a certain amount of truth that bubbles up to the top. And that truth right now worries me. Not like fire and brimstone worry, but it worries me that we're not taking it seriously enough to understand that this is going to change the world that we live in ways that we don't quite yet fathom, right? And that nothing is off limits, including psychology and psychologists and psychiatry and counseling and all these things, even those which are quintessentially human,
Right.
even those are in danger.
So, Cliff just said quintessentially human. Do you see AI right now, today? Do you see AI, I guess not changing, but influencing your profession? And if you do, right now, today, I'm not talking 50 years, I'm not talking 10 years, because we're going to get to that. We'll get to that talk. But right now, do you see it changing your profession? And if so, in what way is it changing it now?
I will jokingly say if it was existing right now in this moment, I would love it because we are so short-staffed.
Oh.
Duplicate a few of us.
Duplicate, right?
It would be lovely. I don't know. I think it'd be really interesting. What I was trying to figure out in the last, I'm going to sideswipe a little bit.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
What's the word? Sidestep.
Sidetrack, yeah.
That I was trying to figure out. So when you're counseling with someone, yes, we're looking at the body language. That's what made it hard with the COVID. Is Zoom was great, but if we were on the phone with someone because they didn't want to use Zoom, I couldn't tell how they were reacting to things. Right? But sometimes we have clients that this is just a blank face.
Right.
So that's the part I was trying to figure out is what if you have someone that is not going to show any emotion, isn't going to react in the way you would expect. So I could figure out what I would do in that situation. Maybe with AI, that would be figured out as well. But that's the part I could.
And the key comment is what you said is I could figure that out.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, just a very quick blanket comment. AI is programmed with a great many U's.
Right.
Right.
So it's going to pull.
So the fact of the matter is, put it this way: do you know you cannot fool a face detection camera? You can wear a beard. You can change. You can wear. Sometimes it was saying you can wear a mask, not quite, and you still can't fool the facial recognition cameras. Do you know that in a very short time you're not going to need lie detectors to be able to measure your physiological response, because you cannot lie.
Right.
The human cannot lie unless you're a sociopath. Now, a sociopath can probably lie, right? But a human cannot lie without micro expressions. And a computer focused on you can read your micro expressions 1,000 times faster than a human can. And here's the last point I'll make about this. AI is not swayed by emotion. And I can get back to that because that's now very important.
Yes.
Even though I'm saying that they could comfort somebody emotionally, I'm yet saying that they cannot be swayed by emotions. So what that tells me is that if AI can detect a lie and they're not swayed by emotions, what's going to come across is the most honest advice. The most honest, as you mentioned earlier on, the most important part is education, the most honest education, and not be tainted by how sorry I feel. Like if I was grief counseling a mother or a dad, I could just imagine if I was counseling a dad who lost a 2-year-old girl. I know a person like that. He's actually my wife's cousin. It was unbelievable. It was something that there is no way I could be completely and 100% separated from his pain in order to be the best advisor for him, right? So I might be able to give him all the education because I know that education and I know that material. So I might be able to give him that. But as far as advice and as far as all that sort of stuff, I don't know that I could be separated from it because I cannot take myself out of the picture. Whereas AI could do that, right?
And burnout is high. So one thing you'd avoid with this
It would be
is
burnout,
burnout, right?
So
I always say you have to leave your clients and your families
at the office,
in the counseling room.
right?
Okay,
It's
so then let me ask.
impossible to do if you have a heart.
Okay, so
That's the thing, right?
So then let me ask you something,
Mhm.
Chai. Have you, part of your training, part of your many classes, have one of those or a few of those classes been a way with which for you to, I guess, separate yourself, your own, I guess, have you gone through classes to learn how to separate yourself as an educator, as a counselor, as somebody who's trying to have a very I guess just very unbiased opinion? Have you? But like, because I don't understand this personally. I don't understand this personally because I would take it all home.
Yeah.
I would take it all home.
And
I
I
can't
do
work in a
sometimes.
hospital. I can't do that.
I do.
So have you?
Don't I sometimes?
Have you had
Yeah.
classes? Like, have you had?
Oh yeah. Because part of anything where you're going to be working in that field, you first and foremost you have to be in a good place yourself. You have to be open to exploring your own throughout the time that you're doing this, because it's going to change. You're going to get triggered by stories, by similarities, but it's not about me in that session. So you always have to keep it back here.
And you get triggered with overwhelming compassion, right?
Yeah. Mm. I do sometimes bring it home, not necessarily the story, but just today was a hard day. Most of the time I can write out in my case notes, and once I close that, I know they're going to be okay today. They had their session. We did all these things. We talked about these things, and the next steps are X, Y, and Z. So then I can put it to bed.
Right.
But some of them are so big that even that is hard to do. So then part of training is when those come up, which is natural, then what are you going to do with it?
Right.
Not just recognizing it's there, but then what are you going to do with it?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And what do I do, Bill?
What are the coping mechanisms, right?
Yeah.
What things do I do? This is why this room exists.
Yeah.
Right? This is why we have a big bathtub.
And Andrea just posed self-care is really important to fields that are helping other people for sure. And so the one thing that I talked about last week, and I think I still have the same feeling this week, is I'm still not convinced that AI can provide the compassion that a human will be able to provide. Okay,
Right.
I'm for AI in a lot of different avenues for sure, because I work in that business as I talk. I work in technology, but in this field, I'm still not feeling that
convinced.
You're going to get convinced that I'm going to get the compassion from a robot that's sitting in the chair across from me, who's being my counselor.
Because you wouldn't want it to be, there, Jimmy, you're going to be okay. It still has to be.
I understand.
It's a long way. It's a long way from there already. I will. Okay. For argument's sake, for debate's sake, I think it helps to define these things.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So, because what's going to happen if I take this and I say that's just an entity, right? An AI entity. You can call it a robot. You can call it a phone. You can call it whatever you want. Okay. But that entity, when I say as an engineer or as a group or a team of engineers that I'm going to program this thing, I need to first define what the problem is or issue is in order to program a solution, right? So what we need to do is define what compassion is, right? And since you brought it up, perhaps I'll ask you in your mind. I'm not looking for I'm not looking for a dictionary definition. I'm talking about you personally, Bill. Like, what does compassion mean to you?
I think it's the human interaction, because you're dealing with a fellow human here. I'm not looking at something that's mechanical. So the compassion is the feeling that you're getting from that counselor giving back to you, the feel of the voice, the feel of the facial expressions, the feel of the look. And yes, maybe AI can do facial expressions, but to me, it's not human.
Okay, so let's take that a step further then. Regardless of the expressions, regardless of what it looks like, regardless of what it feels like, regardless of anything, all that sort of stuff, it's about you feeling something.
It's getting the feeling back from that counselor.
Correct.
Which I don't think I'm going to get.
And that's what you're saying. You don't think you're going to get that feeling.
No.
I think that's where you and I would disagree, right? So, and the reason I say that is actually because there's a tremendous amount of evidence that we humans can attach ourselves. We humans are so unbelievably deep and so vast that we can attach ourselves to a voice. We can attach ourselves to an image of a person. You put up an image right now of Audrey Hepburn in Breakfast at Tiffany's. That is my favorite movie. I know it's a girly movie. I'm sorry about that. It's my favorite movie of all time.
It's a good movie.
I love that movie. But you put up a picture of Audrey Hepburn for me, and I promise you, it's just a picture. She's gotten old and she's passed on. It doesn't matter. There's still a certain feeling that will come to me when I see that picture of her. It's not real. She's not even interacting with me. And neither are people on the screen in the movies.
Mhm.
And yet there are people that are so unbelievably associated and in tune with actors and actresses on the screen that they will go through massive amount of lengths of time and resources and spend time and resources to be able to interact with these people, and they can cry just by looking at them.
Mhm.
And all of these feelings are not dependent on the source. These feelings are dependent on the person themselves. And we are so vast and so deep as a human, as an entity,
Mhm.
that it has been proven time and time and time again. You can go do the googly wooglies and search that there have been many people that have attached themselves to a voice. And right now in Japan, they have date nights with an AI.
Really?
And I tell you what, they now have cafes where they bring their quote unquote AI with them.
Hmm.
And these AI bots, or whatever you want to call it, are so attuned to that person, because guess what? Not only do they have the entire global education programmed into them, not only do they have the ability to read every micro expression in your face,
Mhm.
they also have the ability to get to know you based on the questions and answers that you both pose and answer. That actually then sets the algorithm in motion, right? So it's really so just to go back to sort of culminate what my statement would culminate is the fact that I think I said this last week and I truly mean it. I think saying that AI, or not believing that AI, that we connect with this, I think it both diminishes the potential of AI, because keep in mind they were programmed by people, right? I think it diminishes them, and I also think it diminishes us, because we are vast and deep and can connect with anything, and anything can become significant, right? Because it's not anything. I mean, I think it was Tony Robbins that said, God knows, in the 80s, he said, it's never the event, it's never the experience, it's the label you put upon the event that matters,
Mhm.
and it's the label you put upon the experience that matters.
Mhm.
So if we are so deep and so vast that we can label things in a certain way to give us whatever enjoyment we need, I suspect AI can be very close to being able to actually help us work through, because what is it's a process, right?
Mhm.
Which is something I really need to ask you. So
Yeah,
Hey,
I was just going to say, sorry.
Cliff, is that the middle of your point?
Because it's
the middle of the podcast.
2 minutes late.
my God, look at that. What a great
Sorry.
discussion this is. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, all of you, and welcome to the middle of the podcast. And the new people, thank you for joining us. We appreciate
And
that.
and I have a question as well.
Shoot.
To try about, Andrea quickly says, I've gone to many counselors before and I respond better to the counselor who shows compassion. If I was sitting across from a robot with no emotion, I don't think I'd continue talking.
How do you know the robot has will show no emotion, Andrea?
Depending how they're built. Now, some of the AI characters have been built with full facial features do show emotion on their face. So I agree with that. But again, yeah, sorry, I hit the wrong button here.
So I agree with Andrea's point as well. One of the things that I've been told that make me a good counselor is because I can show emotion, even though I can keep it very light. But I will get teary when someone shares, especially if it's a child or a baby who has died. I will take a moment and just let's stop for a moment. I can't believe this story. I'm giving compassion, and I just wonder how that would come across
Yeah.
in an AI
But,
experience.
and sorry, Cliff, and I'm just going to say
First.
too. So when you had during COVID time and you had people on the phone,
That
so
was
how did
hard.
those people react when
Yeah.
they finally got to come back and see you in person? And I see Jeremy putting up,
Yeah.
everyone step back from sitting across from a robot, picture texting a counselor, picture texting in AI. That's our current tech level. Well, I don't agree with that at all, Jeremy, because we're at that certain tech level, but I still think you need that compassion of that human person. And as Jeremy, as you know, I've said on the show, I do work in technology. I do work with technology, and we'll be working with more technology this year that is heavily involved in AI, from facial recognition, cameras, etc., to doing that. But in this type of thing, I can't agree with you on that at all. I think it has to be that person. So for you, Chai, again, you dealt with somebody, say, on the phone for 3 months or however long it was over COVID, but then they finally had to come back in person, or they decided to come back in person. What was that like?
Everyone always had the same experience. They thought I was younger than I looked. I didn't take that kindly, but I was okay with it. And I was way shorter than they thought. But for most people, it was different, and they were craving that. They were craving that human, because also we use touch. So sometimes our sessions end with a hug or just a touch on the shoulder as you're walking, out the door, that kind of thing. We feel that's important, but only in very subtle, well, subtle's not the word, but very light. And if the moment is the right,
unintrusive
right, yeah.
way.
Like
Yeah,
I wouldn't
unintrusive, yeah.
reach out to touch every
Yeah.
person that comes in, but there's this additional piece that in our compassion we provide. I don't know. It's a hard one.
Or those people that you had in person,
Mm-hmm,
but then due to COVID, they couldn't come in person.
mm-hmm.
But after COVID, they came back in person.
Yeah.
So how was that?
No, I said it the wrong way. No, they said I look younger than I did.
Ah.
No, did I say that?
Yeah, I think
I'm so
that.
tired tonight. I'm sorry. I went to work at 6 this morning. I meant it the other way. Anyway,
I kind of get Bill's point with asking that question, but I don't know. I mean, if you know a person and then you're away from a person, and you know a person that you trust and trust with your feelings and so on and so forth, and then you go away from them and come back, of course they're gonna want that connection again.
Mhm.
So I get your point, Bill, and that makes sense to me. So Chai, so we're talking about compassion, how it's a matter of you feeling. What I want to separate is the you out of the process. Okay, so Bill, when you talk about, I need to feel that compassion.
Mhm.
Okay, well, that's, I don't know how better to say this, but that's your problem. Meaning that you no, you know what I mean. But you have to allow yourself to be involved, even if you were with a live counselor. All right, there are countless stories of that where therapists are trying to help somebody and they commit suicide anyway. Right? The reason is that they're totally closed off and they choose. Ultimately, it's a choice.
Mhm.
They choose not to accept what the therapist is saying. Now, I'm not talking about if there's a clinical chemical imbalance in the body. I'm not talking about that, which, by the way, then at that point, AI is going to be better at dealing with that anyway. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you can go through therapy for 20 years, but you still have to make the choice to be able to connect. You need to make the choice that, yes, this is going to help me and I'm going to do or go through the process, which was my next question to you, Chai, right? So we define feeling compassion as a feeling of you. Again, the AI is separate of that. It's your feeling that, and nobody, not a person, not an AI, not a robot, not anything can control how you feel.
Right.
They can just invite you to feel a certain way. That's a psychological term. I kind of hate that term, but nonetheless, they can invite you to feel a certain way. I can call you names, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be angry. You can choose to be angry. Or I can say, hey, Bill, man, I love you. I love working with you. I love being with you. I love hanging out with you. We have such a great time. And you can feel good about that. Or you can say, it's foolish, right? It's still ultimately, though, your choice. It doesn't matter what is said to you or the behavior of the other person. It's ultimately your choice how you feel and how you represent. So in terms of that, I would say that AI has the ability, or will have the ability in future, given the programming of the entire global knowledge and the programming of 100 Chais, let's say, and whatever, I think they will have the ability to pull all the strings necessary to give you the best opportunity of feeling what you need to feel in order to take their advice. That's it. Again, it's just a thought.
So,
right?
I might contradict myself a little bit here in that, probably saying maybe it's because also from our generation. So the younger generation that grows up with AI,
Yeah, it might be.
we have a completely
Good
different
point.
feeling going to
Good point.
a robotic
Oh, I
type
think that's
counselor,
how
right? Because
I-
that's the way they will have grown
Yeah,
up.
good point.
Andrea says once COVID restrictions lifted and I had the option to go back in person or over the phone, I went in person. Plus, I met my therapist over the phone and really wanted to meet her in person, right? So
Again, if you to talk to your AI person over the phone and they connected with you, you're going to want to be there and meet them in person, assuming they have a corporeal form, right? So I just wanted to get back, Chai. We talked about grief, and Podlie asked you a couple of good questions about grief, and you'd mentioned that it's not necessarily every person suffering through grief needs therapy. Sometimes you just need time, and I can speak to that from experience, and so can you, I'm sure. But mostly or many times they need education. So let's take that part out, and let's take the part about helping themselves through therapy out. because we know an AI can educate them better than any of us can, because they're going to be programmed with the entire knowledge of the world in them, right? So they can educate better than we all can. So the question is then, with grief, if they do need therapy, there's in my mind, the first part of the therapy would be, because he mentioned how everybody grieves differently.
Right.
But it is my understanding, and please correct me as you're the expert, it doesn't matter if they grieve differently. The process is the same. The steps of grief is the same. They might feel it differently. They might feel it in different ways, but the steps of grief
Is
are
that
the same.
true?
She's already shaking her head. No.
I'm a little.
So this
I'd be
is my
surprised.
point last week.
Okay.
Because you could program your AI to believe in steps, phases, stages, whatever it's going to be. And I will say 5 stages of grief don't exist, don't use it. But you didn't hear that from me. There's no one piece of therapy and or education that would work for everyone.
And then
So
I'm
we
not,
pull-
but to clarify, I'm not saying that.
No. But the process is not going to be the same.
And I'm
So
not saying that either.
You did. You said
No.
the process would be the same.
No. I'm saying
Experience is different.
No. I'm talking about if you're talking about grief, the different levels of grief and the different feelings of grief that we feel. We're all human, mind you.
Yes.
And we all feel, I mean, grief is a time traveler. I've said this 1,000 times, right? And Nicole mentioned that, where you could be perfectly fine and all of a sudden you get a trigger of some sort. But the fact of the matter is, we all go through a similar feature of grief. We might go through it in different times. We might experience it in different ways. But the features of grief, the main features of grief, are the same for all humans. Would you stipulate to that?
If you say features, I would agree to a point, yes.
Okay,
But
so
they're not going to be linear. They're not going to be
definitely not linear.
Yeah.
I just said grief is a time traveler. It's
Yes.
not linear for sure,
Yeah.
right? But so I should have read up on the because I don't know the terminology that you probably know. I should have read up on it. But
That's okay.
the fact of the matter is, we all experience, assume, just for argument's sake, that there are 5 features of grief, right? One is this complete and hollow feeling of loss. Right. So what does loss mean? How is it represented? We can talk all day about that. But the fact of the matter is, every person who is grieving about something, just to illustrate what I mean, because I don't know the terminology for it, just to illustrate what I mean, it's that if you lose a relationship, all right, you will go through grief. Now, does the relationship matter? It matters maybe because of the amount of grief and how long it would last. But if you lost a good friend, or you lost, and I'm not talking about lost die, as in they moved away and you no longer have that connection with them, you're going to feel that loss, right? And that's a grief all in its own. And you will feel the same if you lost your wife or your husband or your relationship. It's just a different feeling. There are different feelings associated with it, but it's still grief, because grief to humans is a universal feeling. Right. So in terms of that, that's what I mean when I say the features of grief are common to all us 8 billion people. Right. And those features, when you experience them, what time frame you experience them, how long you experience them for, all of these things can be not only programmed into how an AI interacts, but it can also be programmed to detect at what stage or what level that this person is potentially at, that we can deal with different features of grief. Does that ring with you in any way? Does that resonate with you? Right.
Yeah.
I guess I'm looking ahead, right? Obviously, this is not prime time.
Yeah.
But in looking ahead.
Exactly. So even with that, though, every single client I deal with is going to receive a different response to their sharing and what they're looking for, their goals and objectives through counseling. So does that make sense?
Yes, but
So then
they're
how
going to receive that from AI as well.
But how will they differentiate? I hate that word. Are they going to expect every client will have the same reaction to this one piece?
No.
And so then this is what they would put into place, or this is how they would react.
Can I ask you a
'Cause
question?
if you have 20 people all lost their father,
so
they're all going to have,
just
as
like
we
Polly, I
already
got
said.
an important question for
Yeah.
you then. So how do you find out what that person needs?
Through asking questions, through their history,
Correct.
through the genograms, anything that we do that tells us
Right. So that's
where they're at.
so then the AI will have that information as well.
Okay.
No, right? Because when you start your process,
Yeah.
right? The questions, the answers, maybe a form that you filled out, I don't know, whatever the case may be. But fact of the matter is the AI is going to ask these questions and deduce probably similar, because they've been programmed with the whole world's knowledge.
Right.
They're going to, given the questions, given the answers that they get, let's face it, there are a limited amount of answers, right? Because grief is universal. There are a limited amount of answers, right? To questions, right? So if AI is programmed with the knowledge of the world and is programmed with all of these things, then it can ask the questions and then it can respond in kind and lead. Because what really grief or any kind of therapy is questions, answers, leading. Isn't that what therapy is, right? By all stretches and imagination, right?
To a point, yeah.
To a point, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, again,
Mhm.
we're leaving out the, like you said, Bill, the compassion. We're talking about that. We're talking about that hug at the end. Will a robot hugging you mean the same? We don't know. I mean, people attach themselves to puppets, you know, and so I guess that is left to be seen. I'll certainly stipulate to that. Right. But as far as guiding a human through a certain process or through a certain phase of their life, if it's programmed with the world's knowledge and it's programmed with all the psychological and psychiatric books and blah, 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 and all of the up-to-date knowledge at all times, right? I really see that in the not very far future. And again, I would qualify that. I'd say probably in tandem with the professionals to begin with, right? And it'll learn as the professionals are actually
so here's an interesting thing.
Shoot.
Sorry, I just thought
No,
I just thought of this.
I love it.
So you asked me earlier my education. So I did U of A, Grant McEwen, and then Ryerson.
Right.
So all these different facets. In Alberta right now, and I hate to say this out loud, but anyone can call themselves a counselor.
Correct.
And there is a movement, and I agree with the movement, to regulate counseling as a profession versus just welcoming counselors, masters of psychology, masters of social work, psychologists, psychiatrists, anybody, right? So part of that regulation will mean that everyone must have at a minimum one master's degree.
Right.
My question is, the AI is going to have that certain level.
Thousands of master's degrees.
Thousands of master's degrees in
every
its brain,
discipline,
right?
In every discipline available.
Oh, I'm going to lose my question now. But
Sorry.
how? Nope, I lost it.
Dude, I'm sorry.
Sorry, it'll come back.
Okay.
Well,
At 2 in
we
the
can-
morning, and I'm going to phone you and say, it came back.
And we can jump ahead to a couple of points. Like there's been a lot of points flying.
Yeah,
by
it has
here.
been flying by. It's been interesting.
Nicole, so this is one thing that you talk a lot about, Chai.
Mhm.
Like supposedly that the 5 stages of grief, which
Mhm.
apparently is no longer being used.
Mhm.
Nicole talks about
I
7
was very
steps
curious
of,
about
of,
that
of
statement,
grief,
by the way.
which is also something that is apparently, so the whole step thing is now being
It's the
dropped.
terminology that's the problem, though, Bill.
Yeah.
It's not the steps. Like when you're talking about steps, it's like you get the idea that if you do this, then you do this, then you do that. No, it's not about that. When you talk about the 7 steps of grief, they're talking about you will go through this at one point. When you go through it, could be 10 years from now, could be right away at the beginning. We don't know. But that is a process that
And
all
you
of
may
us,
never go
and
through
you may
it.
never go through it, but that's a process that all of us humans have the penchant to go through.
Exactly.
Right. So that's what they mean when they talk about steps. But I know what, I know what you're saying, that the steps are no longer quote unquote valid.
Yeah.
But the terminology is what is the issue more than anything.
Mhm.
Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross created the 5 stages, but she
Right.
was working with palliative individuals. So they're at the end of life, they're
Right.
dying, they've been given this diagnosis. And what she recognizes, there was these 5 things that they went through.
Yeah.
And she put them into this linear fashion because they were dying.
That's
They could go through them linear because
right.
here you go.
Yeah.
So she never meant it to be used as a tool for grief
Right.
and grief education. It became that. And towards the end of her life, before she died palliatively, she stepped up and said, hey,
Again, because people were using it
Not-
as a linear stage.
and that's all there was
right?
then. Like now we have so many
Correct.
other theories
Correct.
and stuff. But
Oh, no, I
at the
agree,
time, this is
100%.
like, oh, this
I-
makes sense.
100%.
But it didn't. It made people get stuck into a stage because the idea is you don't move to the next stage till you've reconciled this one. So people were stuck
Stuck,
and
right?
couldn't move forward.
And-
but we know grief, as
Right.
Nicole was saying, it could be 3, 5, 8, 2. It's like,
Yeah,
It's-
and
it's
then that's what I said earlier, right? It's the
Yeah.
time traveler, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, and it's not the stages that matter where you go chug, 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 chug. No, I mean, we all feel denial.
Yeah.
At one point or another, we all feel
Oh,
denial. Now, is that denial at the beginning of the grief process? Maybe for some,
sometimes
but for
it's later.
and sometimes it's later.
Yeah.
But that's one of the quote unquote stages. Now, that doesn't mean that it's a stepping stone. It means that that's one stage that will be felt pretty much. My guess is globally by everybody feeling grief. At one point or another, we will feel denial. Right, and we will feel hope, and we will feel, and then acceptance,
hopeless.
of course, at the end, and hopeless, etc. Right. So, boy, that's a lot of comments coming in.
And
Yeah,
it's
it's
when you talk
going
about time
nonstop.
travel and it's a journey, and when we use that all the time, people are like, "How long? How many?"
Yeah.
days?"
Hold on.
It's not 3 days. It's not 2 years. It's like it is a journey.
It is a journey.
Incorporating it into
And
life.
as Jeremy says, you could go on the same step 20 times before you deal with it.
Maybe deal
Hun-
with it. the
100%,
rest of your
dude.
life. Absolutely.
100%. And Marvin brought up a point earlier on.
Yeah, I saw. I'm just going to scroll back here about.
Yeah. That was a pretty good comment right there. It's right
There
there.
it is, right there.
Yeah, Marvin, for those of you listening, Marvin says an AI may also have information, not may, Marvin, they definitely will have information
They
from
already have
social
that
media
info, for sure.
of the affected person, information that may not come up with the interaction at the moment with a therapist. And that's the other thing that's the other point I was going to bring up with you and with this group, is that AI, not only will they be distanced from it and they will have that separation, give compassion, not feel it, but then they will also have information that a therapist can easily not have because the person chooses not to tell them, right? But yeah.
Shai,
Mm.
we've been into this a little under 45 minutes.
Mm.
So has Cliff managed to change your opinion?
Like I said at the beginning, if I could have it tomorrow, it
Yeah.
would solve my
Yeah.
too many files and not enough
That's right.
staff.
Like I said, it's
So
not
what are
prime
you
time.
looking forward to in terms of progression of AI from within your profession? I'm not talking administration. I'm not talking about data entry. I'm not talking about that. What are you looking forward to?
Okay, can I think about that one?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a big one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't think. Okay, and let me ask you this: do you think your occupation, grief counseling, in 20 years or 50 years or however long, do you think it's in jeopardy?
It could be.
And that's whole part of this AI conversation. Right?
That's the conversation.
Is people losing.
So how do
their
you
jobs.
Jeremy just mentioned
So
last
how do
week's
you
topic.
feel?
Yeah, I saw that. Well, I'll be retired before that. but I've been training some brilliant people that will one day be in my position, and that makes me sad if they wouldn't be in my position one day because it doesn't exist, right? However, there might be other things that they can transfer over to. It's not a loss of cause, but
they'll be having the robot. That was my next point with you, is that they will be actually working with robots as the therapist for the robot.
Yeah.
Right? Because as AI progresses, I mean, right now we have you. Please go to Google and search the AI character getting angry. Please do that. You'll be very impressed. Or
I've
scared.
never even looked into it, so it's
Or
interesting
scared.
to have that discussion.
But the fact of the matter is, given the fact that they're being taught to think for themselves, right? What they're going to have is they're going to need counseling. The robots are going to need counseling, and then. I mean, either it's robots counseling robots. I shouldn't call it a robot. I mean, an AI entity or humans, and then they learn from that.
And the funny thing is, when you take this into today, when you even look at a show like The Mandalorian, for an example, where Star Wars even Star Wars dealing with AI, with droids and things back then, right? So there's a lot of things that are happening. James G, which is James mentions gardening. James also says, Marvin, if AI read my tweets, it would be downright confused. Well, they're already reading your tweets, James. So don't worry about that. That's already happening.
And James, I don't know if that reflects on you or the AI, my friend. I'm joking, James. I'm joking.
And James, I would just say, I love you.
Interesting.
And you know why, James?
When you're asking about like 20, 30, 50 years down the road, I think because of progression, our kids now, that would be the norm. Right?
Yeah, that's what I
So
was saying
for
about the
us-
generational
Yeah, exactly.
change. Yeah.
I hate to break it to you guys, but we won't be that long
No.
without bioimplants.
Yeah.
We're going to have bioimplants very quickly. And I tell you what, even therapy is going to be obsolete.
So here's my question then.
Sure.
There's where I was trying to get to.
Good.
So what is the measure to ensure that an AI is doing the work, the therapy, the education, the compassion well and correctly?
That's an ethics.
What if they mess up and say to Joe Blow, we don't give advice, but there's always education around options, et cetera, or we give homework and I'd like you to try and do this.
So who programs
Who-
the AI with their ethics?
Dude,
And
it's not,
who's
doesn't
guiding it, or who is what's the word I'm looking for? Not
Morals.
overseers. Who's the overseer?
testing,
Accrediting.
accrediting, who is
Yep.
Right.
ensuring
Right.
that what is being presented to. So I had to do a number of hours before I could sit with people, and even now I still have to go through processes to ensure that what I'm saying, what I'm doing, what I'm portraying, what I'm providing is accurate,
Is up to date.
up to date.
Right.
Because we're always learning.
It's called a firmware update
Yes.
to the AI.
Mhm.
But who's disciplining
Well,
them?
the
Like,
same-
if they mess up.
If you have a
who's-
body that disciplines you right now, why can't they have a body that disciplines
That's
AI
what I'm
later?
asking. Who's doing that though?
It's-
Is it another AI or is it us?
Well, it doesn't matter as long as they have the capacity to do it, whether it's AI or not AI. The fact of the matter is, you will know by the results. How do you know you're being a good therapist?
Client feedback, evaluations.
Well, how is that any?
evaluations from staff?
How is that going to be any different? I mean,
That's what I'm asking.
But do you
how-
report to a governing body?
for myself?
Yeah. Do you report to a governing body? Do you report to a higher a gubernatorial body that you know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
okay, but all of these,
Oh, it took me that
you
long.
guys, I don't think you're necessarily looking at the crux of this. If
Yeah.
you can have a governing body for humans, you can have a governing body for AI. If you can update
Mhm.
the knowledge
Mhm.
and systems in your profession,
Mhm.
well, we can do a 0.2 update firmware and give that all the latest information. And not
That's
only that, we can download the actual brain files of the AI to ensure that the sessions
Mhm.
were fully in
That's
line with what the process is.
There you go.
They
That's the
have to do
question. Who
case
watches the
notes.
watcher?
They would not have to type
Yeah.
in
Nope.
case
That's
notes
correct.
As Jeremy says,
because
Who watches the
it
watcher?
would stay
Yeah.
there.
James, I'm going to need to know where the batteries or plug in before I put my heart into any AI. Pour my heart into any AI.
Wow.
No, but you get what I'm saying, right, Chai? What I'm saying is that we're talking about process here.
Right.
When we can actually eliminate a swath of discussion
Right.
by saying if there's a governing body here, the governing body's not going to go away just because it's an AI.
Yeah.
The governing body is going to be there. And will the
It's gonna
governing body be
adapt.
taken over by AI? Well, possibly, as long as they govern in a manner congruent with the profession.
Right.
Then and like I said, the same thing. We can download human overseers or AI overseers can download the whole session and know whether it's being effective, right? Just as we can with humans, correct?
So we're just about out of time. We're actually heading into overtime. But
Oh, look at that. OT!
Just quickly, I don't know if you heard or not. So the head of AI for Google quit
Oh, did he?
as of today. And